Okay.
Hello.
The Coronavirus Pandemic, Part 1, Introduction by Mohsen Paul Sarfarazi, Ph.D. This manuscript presents an introduction to the phenomenon of viral biospiritual weaponization and warfare that describes the crux of the present and many other retroviruses launched against us during the course of our history by a nefarious group of energetically parasitic beings that are collectively referred to as negative aliens. This is a new age of enlightenment, and humanity is only beginning to awaken from slumber and unconsciousness to realize that indeed we are all energetic beings comprised of quanta of energy that, when is congealed, forms the dark matter essence of our core manifestation body, that in turn is arranged in a multidimensional configuration that is referred to as our morphogenetic field. Accordingly, what you have not been taught is that your genetic essence or body is comprised of the same quanta of energy that function via your bioenergetics in the form of your light body or aura, an ovoid contour of energy that defines your consciousness space. Indeed, we all thrive within the consciousness field, comprised of countless light as well as dark beings that either share the space-time we thrive in physically or are privy to look upon us from higher grounds that we refer to as inner or higher dimensions of consciousness, going all the way to the innermost of cosmos, in which our God source, an incredibly omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent fountain of energy and progenitor of our consciousness, provides its energetic to us via an open loop of energy of consciousness. And within this field of consciousness, there also exist a series of aliens that have severed their connection to the source, and thus, in order to continue preserving the longevity of their existence, they have become energetically parasitic, siphoning and feeding upon the energies of other solar organic consciousness beings. These negative aliens have been evicted from higher realms of consciousness within the 7 highest super universes, and have thus managed to make a rift in space-time, generating wormholes to invade our comparative lower domains of consciousness within the outer 12 dimensions of the cosmos. And in order to survive, they resort to deception and any form of nefarious methodologies they can muster to invade our consciousness space and siphon our energies. Their doomsday artificial intelligence machinery is devised and developed through essentially reversing the consciousness mechanics of God that affords them stealing energies to feed their parasitic appetite and maintain the operation of their AI infrastructure. And this latest virus, dubbed as coronavirus, is their latest attempt to siphon energies through bloodlust by reversing the concept of viral cleansing to create what may be referred to as a negative virus that, instead of cleansing, attempts to genetically mutate and subsequently take over the functions of its invaded host. Note that a good virus is actually a divine invention that, as a detergent, serves the purpose of cleansing the waste materials and cells within your body when a live bacterium cannot dispose of such materials through devouring them and causing infection in your body. Thus, a virus is not a living organism. It is a mere protein and may contain RNA or DNA that attaches itself to the outer membrane of undesirable cells, which is actually quite benign or inert unless it manages to penetrate a given cell. Yet a good virus has the genetic material of the host to work in such an environment. However, This type of virology has again been adopted and reversed by the negative aliens to actually form a retrovirus that is harmful to our organic cells. So as the negative aliens perceive our organic cells to be the undesirable, they have formed this negative virus as a form of viral weaponry to wage a biospiritual warfare on us. And accordingly, they have targeted this virus that is nothing but an electromagnetic energetic weapon on certain ley lines on Earth to do their nefarious bidding. Yet being an energetic weapon, it is only effective when it is capable to incite resonance or cooperation in your cells to literally open up, inviting this retrovirus in. Note that your bioenergetics is such that your cell DNA can function in a wide range of frequency spectrum. This represents from the extremely low to highest frequencies, in which the latter literally transmigrates your cells to higher dimensions of consciousness. In contrast, the very low frequencies are comprised of those that are associated with anxiety and fear. Thus, the best strategy against this retrovirus is to stay calm and collected, and firmly guarding your consciousness space by not indulging in any low consciousness energies of thoughts and emotions that include anxiety and fear, and remain steadfast, adhering to your highest frequencies of your inner light and spirit to ward off these very low frequencies of electromagnetic energies. Subsequently, the retrovirus that has a highly limited shelf life will dissipate and die, even in the event you were exposed to it. Note also that your body carries a wide range of different types of retroviruses or viruses that the negative aliens have exposed you to through previous genetic engineering, hybridization, or otherwise in the past, which some are even inherited from your biological parents. This is why your body reacts to them through what is perceived as allergies. These are unwanted and alien to your body, and your organic system knows this very well, so it reacts to them. At the same time, your body is equipped with good viruses of its own to effectively cleanse that which is undesirable within your body. Similarly, it even has good bacteria that at the appropriate moment are launched within your body to devour and digest the unwanted living cells, tissues, and organisms within your body. This is what is commonly referred to as your immune system, overseen and operated by your thymus gland, your high heart, to keep you safe and healthy. Thus, all you need to do is to keep your natural immune system functioning properly by keeping it strengthened. In the present manuscript, an introduction is presented to such concepts, including the role negative aliens as parasites play in your reality. Further details and elaboration are presented in the companion papers that include exploring the nature of this retrovirus, as well as its recent connection to our Earth history. These essentially began with the advent of the 2 world wars, when the negative aliens began to infiltrate our governments more directly through offering weaponry in exchange of carrying out abductions, as well as duping them to engage in time travel experiments that were way over their grade of comprehension and digestion, providing the means for the negative aliens to form a rip in our space-time so that weaponry and AI machinery could better enter our space. Additionally, further connection to this retrovirus to our earlier Earth history is highlighted that actually has a deeper root than commonly realized. Introduction: A history of an unconscious enslavement. Humanity is currently amidst an accelerated conflict over personal sovereignty and spiritual freedom that is visually stealth to most people. Yet, the reality of this conflict for attaining human consciousness freedom and spiritual sovereignty is now increasingly becoming visible in physicality, as is evident by the current turn of events globally. This is a time of heightened spiritual awareness, and as such, there is an accelerated consciousness warfare against humanity, with one side trying to free humanity from consciousness enslavement, and the other fighting tooth and nail to maintain itself being in control and power over human consciousness. As a result, it is more important that we look deeply into our core and speak spiritual guidance with regarding the truth of what is transpiring in our reality nowadays. And indeed, there is an artificial global crisis that is manufactured by our captors and opponents who seek to further condemn us to fear, anxiety, and such that have always served them as the primary instrument to imprison us in a self-generating manner, with us and only us being ultimately the cause of it through the allowance of the catastrophes that have been befalling upon us through ignorance, slumber, and unconsciousness. This is the underlying nature of unconsciousness enslavement. It can decay from within, culminating in our very precious divine consciousness energies to be relinquished and siphoned, effectively becoming entropic, with our captors to further put it to use for their parasitic feeding, to effect their prolonged longevity through the continued use and further development of their AI doomsday technologies. Thus, in reality, unconsciousness enslavement is effectuated through self-destructive tendencies, primarily fueled by anxiety and fear that serve the negative aliens' agenda of siphoning loosh for their parasitic nourishment. And the most effective way to eradicate fear is through awakened enlightenment, or by simply knowing, by subscribing to the truth, which is effectuated by directly facing fear and the cause generating it, with the acumen and courage of finally saying no to it. Therefore, by so to speak hiding in the bushes as to avoid encountering it, and through denials, resorting to ignorance and such, no remedy can ever be resulted. And indeed, the strategy of promoting ignorance plaguing us to slumber and unconsciousness through prompting the impulses of either apathy or conversely numbness, exasperated by creating a sense of discomfort in facing this unpleasant truth, is the key culprit for maintaining us as prey to feed upon. Indeed, our ignorance has been the most effective tool for the negative aliens to institute a self-ultimating approach to impose their nefarious agendas for millennia, which goes back to more than 210,000 years, followed by the very beginning of the last ascension cycle circa 26,000 years ago, and the onset of Luciferian rebellion, finally culminating in almost 5,500 years ago, which marks the onset of unplugging our DNA, also coinciding with the period relevant to the total purge of the historical records with regard to our human heritage. Excuse me. And this recent crisis of coronavirus has been the latest strategy to deploy yet another campaign of misinformation, disinformation via holographic inserts that affect our consciousness grid and ley lines, targeting certain particular areas, which is used as an artificial weapon to primarily incite anxiety and fear in the public. And as it happens, the virus is of a somewhat different nature, as it directly responds to low frequencies of anxiety and fear generated in humanity that serves the nefarious purpose of its growth and multiplication and spreading among the public. This artificially manufactured virus is particularly programmed to interface with human genome, causing its mutation. Otherwise, there is nothing unusual about the underlying nature of its launching and intent for its growth and multiplication, devastating humanity, causing an inordinate amount of pain and suffering, exasperated by fear and anxiety. In fact, it falls under the same category as the warmongering efforts by the negative aliens, as may particularly be typified by the World War I and World War II, leading to the Armageddon stories of the Y2K, leading to the 9/11 demise of the Twin Towers in New York City, etc. And consistent with these nefarious agendas, there have been the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk project and the failed, not manifested, Bridge Zone project, in which the negative aliens tried, by duping our governments and scientists, to embark on yet another premeditated failed attempt to make us venture into time travel, while they make a rip in space-time, entering our domain to bring more destructions and devastations, conforming to their continued enslavement programming. This is yet another example of their weaponized attempt to take full control of our Earth energetic resources, as well as our embodied consciousness. In fact, this all falls under the same agenda of one world order, attempting to take over the entire Earth and subjugating us to one centralized oppressive rule, initially devised in the 19th century, to be overseen by such secret societies such as the Illuminati, as well as others. And although this program has continuously failed to fully materialize, nowadays that they are losing the war in human consciousness with their nefarious AI machinery being systematically and continuously being dismantled by the Guardian's founders and their allies from the transdimensional times, next higher universes, their programs are becoming more devious and hidden to render the same objective. Accordingly, now they are contemplating to wage a biological weapon that would retard or postpone the inevitable event of their demise. Although they have for long been planning out to institute the so-called One World Order agenda on Earth, they have also been continuously scheming to better control the population of Earth humans by reducing it to a mere 500,000 individuals. In fact, in anticipation of the Y2K and what they presumed would ensue in leading to December the 21st, 2012, they instructed their so-called Kabbalist elites, and more appropriately traitor puppets and human operatives attached to the shadow government on Earth, to prepare millions and millions of multiple occupancy caskets, some of which are still left out in a field in the state of Georgia, which is under their land lease. Additionally, they constructed many concentration camps, very much like the Auschwitz and such used by the Nazis and fascists and their allies during World War II, that are still spread all over the United States, complete with guard towers, barbed wires, and other tight security measures in anticipation of human mass massacres. Furthermore, it is not surprising that these facilities, despite the inordinate amount of money that was expended through FEMA to construct them, have never been employed as even regular prisons for incarceration of individuals in the United States. And they have attempted to incite civil wars and such, the purpose of all of which is to harvest bloodlust for negative aliens, for the purpose of energetic siphoning as well as maintaining their control on the Earth territory. And all the paltering, misinformation, disinformation, and exaggerated information that nowadays you come across, such as the breakout of a devastating and deadly virus, constitutes primarily another ploy to numb the senses with fear and anxiety and distraction from the ensuing spiritual awakening and its continued development that a great number of humanity has come to experience or subscribe to as of lately. This also adequately distracts the humanity's attention from the much needed disclosure regarding the reality of aliens, our true history as a human species, etc. Meanwhile, the negative aliens are trying to buy time, mobilizing their nefarious forces again in order to be able to gain grounds on what they perceive now as being their battlefield. At the same time, they reward their subjects and puppets by providing them with a means to get on the bandwagon of gouging prices and profiteering with the promotional dissemination of purported fear of shortage, leading to rationing products whose use are hardly detrimental or even essential to our survival. For example, a comical trend nowadays in the Western countries, e.g. the United States, where there is the threat of imposition of a quarantine with regard to spreading of purportedly devastating and lethal worldwide virus, is that people are panicking to buy the last roll of toilet paper from the supermarket shelves. And the amusing thing is that Muslims and many other cultures in the Eastern world, and indeed other parts of the world, have always taken the more hygienic approach of washing themselves off via water through the use of a simple container, a hose attached to the toilet bowl, or use of a bidet and such. So do not be fooled by the absurd propagandas whose only objective is to cause pandemonium under the disguise of the need for emergency measures, to what is clearly a ploy for creating economic chaos, meanwhile profiteering from the venture while laughing all the way to the bank, so to speak. And negative aliens see this as another advantageous byproduct of creating such widespread panic, benefiting both themselves as they ultimately take most of these proceeds off planet, as well as rewarding their own subjects and puppets through planetary corporatocracy. You are not in Kansas anymore. Take heart and be assured that these nefarious tactics are no longer effective, unless you intended to aid the negative aliens by readily cooperating with these aggressors by way of going to slaughter as lambs, so to speak. Note that the planetary grid and ley line structure, together with the planetary consciousness mechanics that includes the reverse stargates and such, have been reclaimed, and it is not what it was a decade or even several years ago. Thus, the power elites and the servants and puppets of the negative aliens who still try to carry out the negative aliens' nefarious agendas on the planet will be objects of ridicule in due course. The author has been a witness to numerous individuals awakening, at least for the past decade. These individuals now understand that they are no longer in Kansas, so to speak. They realize that they are multidimensional beings and that they do not just live a short mortal physical life on this planet. These awakened and enlightened souls have begun to appreciate the nature of their holographic reality as solar organic consciousness beings, instead of being desperately attached to what is perceived as all there is in even physicality. They are beginning to appreciate more and more the reality of their bioenergetics being governed by a template or instructional sets that define their morphogenetic field. Thus, not even genetics is, in reality, what was perceived even by the learned scientists a decade ago. In this respect, not everything can be described by a proteinugenetics theory. In contrast, our genes respond to holographic signals comprised of a language of light and sound. In this respect, your genes respond to a natural frequency that describes the foundation of their energy. Thus, you can literally speak to your genes by distinct frequential signals that awaken and activate your genes to respond to certain stimuli. Unfortunately, the negative leans are also apprised of this. Yet all they work with are low-frequency electromagnetic waves that interface with lower dimensional aspects of our genetics. And some of these are specific to inciting fear, anxiety, that if not controlled, cause pandemonium in the public. It is therefore of utmost importance to avoid the onset of anxiety and fear as a form of embodied consciousness being. With regard to the nature of reality, those who are awakened or are in the process of becoming gradually spiritually enlightened begin to know within that there has been something wrong about their nature of reality, as something that simply does not feel right. And they could not be any more correct. Simply, we have been living in a phantom or artificial reality, a form of corrupted reality that does not emanate from the divine mind of the prime creator. On negative aliens oppressors. A group of aliens have been interfering in the consciousness affairs of humans for almost 550 million years. This is only 10 million years after humanity was formed to embody crystalline 12D silicate-based DNA with a bioenergetics comprised of a morphogenetic field defining its genetics within the 12D structured grid of tree of life in the Nebudan universe. The Nebudan universe is one of the densest physical domain within the 84 edifice of space-time dimensions of the physical planes of the cosmos. The cosmos itself epitomizes the whole body of our prime creator, with its heart, brain, and soul being located at its center as a pure form of omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, crystalline, coherent, intelligible consciousness energy. And upon explosion implosion about itself, it forms a total of 356 main dimensions of consciousness, of which the realm of physicality epitomizes progressively highly congealed state of energies as it stretches from the inner to the outer to the outer confines of the cosmos. And many billions of years ago, certain groups of incredibly narcissistic consciousness beings decided to defy God's fundamental mandate of non-interference with respect to the consciousness affairs of other beings, whose main objective is to self-discover through experimentation with the sojourns of life within myriad of space-times in order to expand their consciousness or state of self-awareness. In contrast, these individuals, through accumulation of an inordinate amount of negative karma within their souls, manage to sever their connection from God, thus losing their privilege from benefiting from the open loop of consciousness energies through which God lovingly and unconditionally disseminates its consciousness energies to all sentient solar beings, including those of organic beings embodied within the 84 realms of physicality. As a result, these individuals who had decided to play God, defying the most fundamental directive of God with respect to the mandate of non-interference, who have been engaged in wars and oppressive suppressive methods to subjugate others to their whims as inferiors, preying upon them as slaves, suddenly became deprived of receiving the consciousness energetics of God, and thus started to self-consume. And as they refused to repent and once again join the solar organic consciousness structure of the multi-universes, they had no recourse but to become parasitic, feeding upon the consciousness energies of others. This continued on and on until they became evicted from other universes within the 7 super universes, higher heavens. Thus, those who are not captured or cleansed by the light found their way into our rather new universe by comparison. This universe also suited their purpose of wanting to work more with rather lower state of frequential energies by a way of increased congealment and physical density. Thus, in order to preserve their once acquired or gifted consciousness and the intelligence they had possessed, they used their knowledge that include a modicum understanding of the consciousness mechanics of God to build an artificial infrastructure and machinery, including weaponry to preserve their existence, as well as trying to effect their longevity and even delusionally attain a state of immortality by siphoning and preying on the energetics of other solar organic consciousness beings. As their artificial intelligence machinery used to maintain their consciousness existence, as well as siphoning energies from others, also demanded expenditure of energy, they began to make rifts in the space-times via weaponry and proceeded to join these rifts or wormholes to form a black hole at the center of our universe that has been serving as the main reserved Moloch stored energy tank. Accordingly, after destroying the 12 stargates in Nebudan universe, they began their program of consciousness reversal. This culminated in the demise of Lyra, which has been regarded as the cradle of civilization, with its bits and pieces falling into the Milky Way galaxy. All such damage and destructions of the Stargate system and the consequent reversal of their consciousness mechanics have been achieved through myriads of intergalactic wars and by taking the incredibly high gestalt of consciousness existing within this universe, by our comparison, in bondage, and forcing them as slaves to serve as potent sources of energetics to fuel their artificial intelligence infrastructure. Furthermore, their mingling with the solar organic beings and their enslavement has led to genetic modification through hybridization to give rise to an advent of numerous other races. These entities, whose original genetics are reptilians, may even be further traced to a form of carrions, vultures, or parasitic birds, as presumably being their creators. They now epitomize a group of dark entities that are energetically parasitic and regularly siphon energies of the organic consciousness beings, be it on the individual or planetary level, to sustain themselves and their nefarious doomsday artificial machinery. They are basically of hybridized reptilian and insectoid genetics. As our moon is an artificial satellite built and brought here by the reptilians from the Orion to primarily siphon the magnetic energies of Earth, the dark entities that reside there to operate this AI machinery are referred to as lunar being, as opposed to solar consciousness beings. And basically all alien beings that are energetically parasitic, who violate our rights of sovereignty and consciousness freedom through attacking our consciousness space and either attempting or succeeding to feed upon us by siphoning our consciousness energies, are referred to as negative aliens. Indeed, this group of negative aliens constitute a form of anti-life, anti-God, anti-creation, that have managed to sustain their existence through parasitic means, feeding upon the divine energies of solar organic consciousness beings. As they no longer have a creator or a source or a point of support that can rely upon and receive energies from, they cannot sustain themselves eternally, and thus must eventually perish and die after self-consuming and depleting their energies. Alternatively, in order to continue on, preserving their initially acquired consciousness, energy, or intelligence, they must resort on siphoning and feeding the divine energies of others. In this respect, they have endured, through parasitic means, to hold on to their intelligence and naturally devise an artificial machinery that is utilized to siphon the energies of others, and at the same time, use a portion of such harvested energies in order to operate. And such has been the consciousness mechanics legacy of Earth humans for almost 212,000 years. Actually 8 times 26,556 plus almost 9 years to this date. During this time, the negative aliens have managed to implement their reverse consciousness mechanics that is based upon metatronic reversal, and more precisely, the Fibonacci sequence of parasitic energetic utilization and the advent of bi-wave energetic format. In this respect, they have managed to reverse the 12D energetic of all solar organic consciousness entities. And through reducing it to a 10D grid, it manages to steal the God's divine energies disseminated to organic beings. Thus, as they have no connection to the central source and are thus deprived of its open loop of energies readily and lovingly disseminated to all solar organic consciousness beings, they have stooped to the act of stealing a portion of such energies and diverting them to their Moloch storage tank that behaves as a black hole. The principle of operation of solar organic consciousness is based upon an equal interval of expanding away, electric male operation, and contracting, magnetic female operation, towards the God source. This means we receive consciousness energy from the God source as the center for the 0-point field of energy. Accordingly, we can expand away from the God source in light of self-discovery and increased self-awareness, experimenting with the sojourns of life, in particular space-times, that are transmitted or projected onto them, that come to us as holographic light beams of reality. Accordingly, we choose from a repertoire of such reality scenarios, with the probability of their manifestation determined by our frequential concentration, attention, and choosing. However, the negative aliens have managed, by damaging, changing, reversing the God's consciousness mechanics, to siphon some of its magnetic, female energetics. And a simple example of this that has manifested on Earth may be readily observed with reference to manipulating and distorting the scheme of rotational spin of Earth about itself. Namely, our Earth staff, about which Earth spins about itself, that ultimately is in line with the God source at the center of cosmos, has been artificially knocked off its natural spinning configuration and maintained at an unnatural tilt of about 23.5 degrees by an AI machinery primarily based on the moon's satellite and overseen by the negative aliens' operation on Saturn. And this machinery that creates false gravity by maintaining the Earth's spin axis at such an artificial configuration is referred to as the gravitron, which is actually part of a much larger reversal system referred to Nibiru electrostatic transduction, NET field technology, headquartered in Stonehenge, England, which until very recently December 2019, was fully operational, yet is now dismantled by the Guardian's founders. Thus, through maintaining the Earth's spin axis at such an unnatural configuration, Earth's magnetic energies are partially siphoned and directed to their black hole system via the planet Abaddon that lies directly along Earth's trajectory to the black hole residing at the center of our Milky Way galaxy. However, all this knowledge has been carefully guarded and hidden from the people of Earth. Instead, through NET and their other nefarious consciousness mechanics reversal systems, the negative aliens had always managed to dupe humanity to believe in a form of phantom reality that was all based upon deception, lies, and secrecy, with limited knowledge being available only to their Kabbalist para-elites as their servants and operatives on Earth, who are no more than puppets or marionettes on strings. And the way they have managed to do this is through placement of holographic inserts that act as intermediary apertures or lenses that distort and reverse the consciousness mechanics reality of the God source projected to humanity. Thus, simply, do not believe in common mainstream narratives. Do not believe in common mainstream narratives. The cabal own and operate and thus control all the news media. This is why hardly ever you can hear a positive or inspiring news in the media. In contrast, all you read and hear about in the news constitutes terrorism, murder, crime, and all forms of negative news that serve their purpose of fear-mongering among the public, always leading you to think that you are never safe and have to always be plagued and inundated with fear of survival and such. Meanwhile, the fear and anxiety that is generated in people serve to release low-frequential energy of consciousness, loosh, that the negative aliens can utilize and thrive upon. This, together with other fear of survival tactics, such as grave financial concerns, etc., as well as self-destructive impulses as to create sexual misery, addictions of various kinds and such, also serve the purpose of keeping the public always mentally occupied so that they never have any quality time for spiritual enlightenment or resort to their heart-based intuitive intelligence, which are actually frowned upon and ridiculed by the so-called intelligent thinkers. However, as indicated before, now such strategies for mind control and manipulation of the masses are being progressively phased out through humanity's re-education and plight of resorting to self, as opposed to outer artificial exploitations. Thanks to our guardians, founders, and their many extra and trans-dimensional benevolent beings, who are here to guide and enlighten us so we can upshift our frequency of collective consciousness. This way, no longer such anti-human culture will be able to cultivate or grow, although at least one faction of the negative aliens, the reptilians from Orion, has not yet given up and is still trying to promote such nonsense through their mind control and propaganda tactics. And this includes the Orion Draconian reptilians and their hybrids. A brief note on the newly introduced virus. This latest ploy with regard to the recent viral infection, the coronavirus, yet exemplifies another one of such nefarious agendas to maintain their repressive act of violating our God-given freedom and right of sovereignty. In this respect, the crux of the current biological weaponry is to incite terror or dread for survival. And the very mechanism by which this virus was introduced was through low-frequency energetic pulsing, through covert technology and its broadcast or dissemination through airways to contaminate select ley lines and their coordinate vector on Earth, e.g., China, Iran, Italy, etc. In essence, this virus constitutes an artificially manufactured energetic parasitic agent that as an implant adheres to a humanity's negative impulses by attacking its mind and consciousness embodiment. More specifically, our brain waves may be entrained to respond to a spectrum of low frequencies to trigger their action of resonating with or mimicking such signals. These negative impulses are, in fact, very much aligned and resonant with low frequential energies being broadcast. It is a form of electromagnetic wave weaponry that attacks the human body and mind. In fact, this is reminiscent of many low-frequency sonic noises and rumblings that have recently been heard in the Earth's ley lines.
Wow. What an amazing paper.
Yeah, it's quite relevant
Completely
for the times.
relevant. And I would say, you know, there's an awful lot of people, even some people who are helping us now do some readings with Mohsen's papers that have only really recently woken up in the last year. And, you know, you can see it and feel it happening. Yeah. All you do is keep, you know, because we're faced with having to deal with this low frequency energy constantly getting at us too within our own heads. But as you know, I suppose the more I've read of Mohsen's papers, and you probably feel the same, my own energy, you know, has completely changed even in the last 12 months. I was changing anyway over the last number of years because I had my awakening, you know, a long time ago, but it was a very long journey. You know, there was an awful lot for me on my journey, and that seems to be the same for everybody. I'm sure yourself as well, Sue.
I think I went through certain things about 30 years ago or more, which led me into discovering so much out there.
It's like pockets of discovery where, and even yesterday when I was talking to Connie, probably all through your life, if you look back, there were certain times your higher self seemed to come in and really look after you and your destiny, your ability to move forward.
Which at the time it happened, you may not have perceived it as being...
No, it's only in looking back that you actually realise what happened. But now, because we have so much more awareness, Mohsen and so many other amazing people who are talking about what's really happening, they're building momentum, and
you can feel that. You can feel it. Not everybody, you know, is resonating with it yet, and maybe they're not meant to in this lifetime. But
see, that's the other thing. It's degrees, isn't it? We feel it in different it's like different levels. But I think
and things come at the right time. You might be reading or talking to somebody, and then I didn't know Mohsen 6 weeks ago, and yet I was guided to him, or he was guided. We were guided to connect.
Yeah, your first reading, I listened in, and you know, it was kind of like with myself and Mohsen. It was like, you know, it's possible there's a part of us, not possible, it's more probable that a part of us does know each other really, really well. because we've just had these inserts in our bodies for so long, over generations and generations and generations. But our original divine self is, you know, all knowing and all connected.
Absolutely.
And that's what's happening for us here. And it's really lovely. And just to tell the audience as well, that we are going to be doing a separate question time with Mohsen on all these papers that we're having readings on, that Mohsen hasn't been here for the actual reading. We will be having question time, and we would really love for people to also ask questions, or even just make comments about, you know, how you feel about the particular part of the paper or the entire paper. We'd really love to, you know, get some more interaction, build momentum, you know, get everybody really feeling. I think that, I know that's the only way change really happens, when we build our own momentum within, and then we vibrate out towards other people and it comes back again. That's really what we're aiming for here. And I'm sure you have questions, Sue, you know, so I always do when I read the papers. You know, have you noticed that when you read the paper, you're just reading it to yourself, but then when you read it out loud, more questions come.
More questions come. Yeah, it opens up more questions.
Yeah. So absolutely. So we'll end it here for now, but just to let everybody know that we would appreciate your comments, and please share this freely, and we'll be returning with question time very soon. And thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.